another, and Janny and Damon shared a frown and a headshake. They all thought they knew what was coming next, that I was leaving town on a new murder investigation, probably a serial, maybe even tonight, just like I always did. "I'm not going anywhere," I said, and grinned broadly. "Quite the opposite, actually. In fact, I'm going to attend Damon's choir practice tonight. I want to listen to that joyful noise. I want to see how well he supports his breath these days." "You're going to choir practice?" Damon exclaimed. "What, is there some killer in our singing group?" I was purposely stretching it out some, my eyes methodically going from face to face. I could tell that none of them had a clue what was coming next. Not even our crafty know-it-all Nana had figured it out yet. Janny finally looked down at Allie. "Make him tell us what's going on, Allie. Make him talk." "Come on, Daddy," said the little man, who was already a skillful manipulator. "Tell us, before Janelle goes crazy." All right. Here's the deal. I'm afraid I have to tell you that I'm now unemployed, and that we're practically destitute. Well, not really. Anyway, this morning I resigned from the FBI. For the rest of the day I did nothing. Tonight it's the rehearsal of Cantante Domino for me. Nana, Mama, and the kids went wild with applause. "Destitute! Destitute!" the kids began to chant. And you know what? It had a nice ring to it. So did No More Monsters. Chapter 36. The next beat in the story went like this. John Sampson was a star in the Washington PD these days. Ever since Alex left the department and moved over to the FBI, Sampson's reputation had been rising. Not that it hadn't been on a high level before. Not that Sampson didn't get a lot of respect for all sorts of reasons. The curious thing, though, was that Sampson couldn't have given a rat's ass. Peer approval had never meant much of anything to the big man. Unless maybe it was Alex's, and even that was a hit-and-miss thing. His latest case was definitely a challenge. Maybe because he hated the bad actor he was trying to bring down. The scum in question, Gino Greaseball Giametti, operated strip joints and massage parlors as far south as Fort Lauderdale in Miami. His sideline was catering to pervs who needed adolescent girls, sometimes prepubescent ones. Giametti himself was obsessed with the so-called Lolita complex. "Capo," Sampson muttered under his breath as he drove up Giametti Street in the ritzy Calorama section of D.C. The self-important term referred to Capitano, a captain in the mafia. Gino Giametti had been a significant earner for years. He'd been one of the first mobsters to figure out that big money could be made bringing in pretty young girls from the former Soviet bloc, especially Russia, Poland, and Czechoslovakia. That was his specialty, and it was the reason Sampson was riding his ass now. His one regret was that Alex couldn't be with him on this bust. This was going to be a sweet takedown. At a little past midnight, he pulled up in front of Giametti's house. The mobster didn't live too extravagantly, but all his needs were met. That was how the mafia took care of its own. Sampson peered into his rear view and saw two more cars ease up against the curb directly behind him. He spoke into a mic sticking out from his shirt collar. "Good evening, gents. I think this is going to be a fine night. I can feel it in my bones. Let's go wake up the greaseball." Chapter 37. Sampson's partner these days was a 28-year-old detective named Marion Handler, who was almost as big as Sampson was. Handler was certainly no Alex Cross, though. He was currently living with a large-breasted but small-minded cheerleader for the Washington Redskins, and he was looking to make a name for himself in homicide. "I'm fast-tracking, dude," he liked to say to Sampson, without a hint of humor or self-effacement. Just being around the cocky detective was exhausting and also depressing. The man was plain stupid. Worse, he was arrogant about it, flaunting his frequent logic lapses. "I'll take the point on this one," Handler announced as they reached the front porch of Giametti's house. 4 other detectives, one holding a battering ram, were already waiting at the door. They looked to Sampson for direction. "Take the lead?" "No problem, Marion. Be my guest," he said to Handler. Then he added, "First in, first to the morgue." He spoke to the detective holding the battering ram. "Take it down." Detective Handler goes in first. The front door collapsed in 2 powerful strikes with the ram. The house alarm system began to wail, and the detectives hurried inside. Sampson's eyes took in the darkened kitchen. Nobody there. New appliances everywhere. An iPod and CDs scattered on the floor. Kids in the house. "He's downstairs," Sampson told the others. "Giametti doesn't sleep with his wife anymore." The detectives hurried down deep wooden stairs on the far side of the kitchen. They hadn't been inside more than 20 seconds. In the basement, they burst in the first door they came to. "Metro Police! Hands up! Now, Giametti!" Marion Handler's voice boomed. The greaseball was up quickly. He stood in a protective crouch on the far side of the king-size bed. He was a short, pot-bellied, hirsute man in his mid-40s. He looked groggy and still out of it, maybe drugged up. But John Sampson wasn't fooled by his physical appearance. This man was a stone-cold killer. And much worse. A pretty, naked young girl with long blonde hair and fair white skin was still on the bed. She tried to cover her small breasts and shaved genital area. Sampson knew her name, Paulina Sroka, and that she was from Poland originally. Sampson had known she would be here, and that Giametti was rumored to be madly in love with the blonde beauty he'd imported from Europe 6 months ago. According to sources, the greaseball had killed the girl's best friend because she'd refused to have anal sex with him. "You don't have to be afraid," Sampson said to Paulina. "We're the Washington police. You're not in any trouble. He is." "Just shut the hell up," Giametti yelled at the girl, who looked both confused and scared. "Don't say a word to them. Not a word, Paulie. I'm warning you." Sampson moved faster than it looked like he could. He threw Giametti on the floor, then cuffed him like a steer at a rodeo. "Don't say a word," Giametti continued to yell, even though his face was pressed into the shag rug. "Don't talk to them, Paulie. I'm warning you, you hear me?" The girl looked pathetic and lost as she sat among the rumpled bedsheets, attempting to cover herself with a man's shirt she'd been given by the detectives. She finally spoke in the softest whisper. "He make me do anything he say. He do everything bad to me. You know what I am saying. Everything you could imagine. I can hardly walk. I am 14 years old." Sampson turned to Handler. "You can take it from here, Marion. Get him the hell out of here. I don't want to touch the slime." Chapter 38. An hour later, Gino Giametti was basted, then grilled until he was well done under bright lights in Investigation Room No. 1 at the 1st District Station House. Sampson wouldn't take his eyes off the vicious gangster, who had a disturbing habit of scratching his scalp compulsively, hard enough to make it bleed. Giametti didn't seem to notice it himself. Marion Handler had carried the show so far, done most of the preliminary questioning, but Giametti didn't have much to say to him. Sampson sat back and observed, sizing up both men. So far, Giametti was getting the best of it. He was a lot smarter than he looked. "I woke up and Paulie was sleeping in my bed. Sleeping. Just like when you busted in. What can I tell you? She has her own bedroom upstairs. She's a scared little girl. Crazy sometimes, too. Paulie does housekeeping and shit like that for my wife. We wanted to put her in the local schools, the best schools. We were letting her work on her English first. Hey, we were trying to do the right thing by that kid, so why are you busting my balls?" Sampson finally pushed himself forward in his seat. He'd heard enough bullshit for tonight. "Anybody ever tell you you could do stand-up?" he asked. And Marion, he thought, you could be a straight man. "Matter of fact, yeah," Giametti said and smirked. "Couple of people told me that exact same thing. You know what? I think they were cops, too." "Paulina's already told us she saw you kill her friend, Alexa. Alexa was 16 years old when she died. The girl was garroted." Giametti slammed his fist down on the table in front of him. "A crazy little bitch! Paulie is lying through her teeth. What'd you do, threaten to send her back? Deport her to Poland? That's her biggest fear." Sampson shook his head. "No, I said we'd help her stay in America if we could. Get her into school, the best. Do the right thing by her." "She's lying and she's nuts. I'm telling you, that pretty little girl is two kinds of crazy." Sampson nodded slowly. "She's lying? All right, then how about Robert Gallo? Is he lying too? He saw you kill Alexa and stuff the body in the trunk of your Lincoln. He made that up?" "Of course he made it up. That's total bullshit. It's complete crap. You know it. I know it. Bobby Gallo knows it. Alexa? Who the hell is Alexa? Paulie's imaginary friend?" Sampson shrugged his broad shoulders. "How would I know Gallo's story is bullshit?" "Because it never happened. That's how. Because Bobby Gallo probably made a deal with you." "You mean it didn't happen that way? Gallo wasn't actually an eyewitness, but Paulina was. Is that what you're saying?" Giametti frowned and shook his head. "You think I'm stupid, Detective Sampson? I'm not stupid." Sampson spread his hands to indicate the small, very bright interview room. "But here you are." Giametti thought about it for a few seconds. Then he gestured toward Handler. "Tell Junior here to go take a nice long walk off a short pier. I want to talk to you. Just you and me, big man." Sampson looked over at Marion Handler. He shrugged and rolled his eyes. "Why don't you take a break, Marion?" Handler didn't like it, but he got up and left the interrogation room. He made a lot of noise on the way out, like a petulant high school kid who'd just been given detention. Sampson didn't say anything once he and Giametti were alone. He was still observing the mobster, trying to get under the punk's skin. The guy was a murderer, that much he knew. And Giametti also had to know that he was up shit creek right now. Paulina Soroka was 14 years old. "The strong, silent type," Giametti smirked again. "That your act, big boy?" Still not a word from Sampson. It went on that way for several minutes. Giametti finally leaned forward, and he spoke in a quiet, serious voice. "Look, you know this is bullshit, right? No murder weapon, no body. I didn't clip any little Polack girl named Alexa. And Paulie's crazy. Trust me on that one. She's young in years, but she's no little girl. She was hooking in the old country. You know about that?" Sampson finally spoke. "Here's what I know and what I can prove. You were having sex with a 14-year-old in your own house." Giametti shook his head. "She's not 14. She's a little whore. Anyway, I have something for you, something to trade. It's about a friend of yours, Alex Cross. You listening, Detective? Hear this. I know who killed his wife. I know where he is now, too." Chapter 39. John Sampson got out of his car slowly, and he trudged along the familiar stone walkway, then up the front stairs of the Cross family house on 5th Street. He hesitated at the door, trying to collect his thoughts, to calm himself down if he could. This wasn't going to be easy, and no one would know this more than he did. He knew things about Maria Cross's murder that even Alex didn't. Finally, he reached forward and rang the bell. He must have done this 1,000 times in his life, but it never felt like it did now. No good would come of this visit. Nothing good whatsoever. It might even end a long friendship. A moment later, Sampson was surprised that it was Nana Mama who came to the door. The old girl was dressed in a flowery blue robe and looked even tinier than usual, like an ancient bird that ought to be worshipped. And in this house she surely was, even by him. "John, what's the matter now? What is it? I'm almost afraid to ask." "Well, come inside. Come inside. You'll scare all the neighbors." "They're already scared, Nana. Sampson drawled and attempted to smile. "This is southeast, remember?"